turn it over to him.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if you leave this or not.
There are a lot of people to thank, actually, the people I'm really grateful for are the people who fed us, actually. That was tangible. And we have, here they are, the Bella Luna Pizzeria, Happy Harbor, Island Time Deli, Jellyfish Restaurant, Lost Key Golf Club, Sunset Grill, and then Donna Joey Carter donated their condominiums, which made our life quite pleasant. We slept very well. Beautiful, beautiful view at the, the WCI community that will appear very thoroughly. And Annie Griffin arranged for all this to be delivered and made coffee all the time. And that was great. And one thing that is unusual, by the way, we do get that kind of help. People understand that this isn't the common good. But what was unusual is the planning department allocating so much time to us. Normally they're withdrawn, they stay, come see us, we don't come out, and they were here so much of the time that it was actually, Lloyd and his crew, that it was actually unusual when they weren't around. And what they did is they basically said, they were very supportive, keep going, we like it, and so forth. And we need that all the time. Because of course, those of you who say, yes, I like it, I really don't know whether you're urging us on. I don't know you individually well enough to know whether it's in the common good or happens to be a piece of land you own. But when the planning department actually says, go on, that really means something. And they were there all the time. And not just one person, but 4, 5, and 6 people. Therefore, this plan is very much embedded basically in government. This is a plan that is dependent upon the administration of government. Now, where you all come in is if you like this idea, and particularly if you think that it is going to receive any friction or any resistance, then you have to show up in the political process. Okay? So what I'm going to try to do today is not so much go technically through everything. There's an awful lot of technique. I am going to dip in a couple of times and say, look how deep the technique is. And for example, Rick Hall is going to just sort of dip in and say, this is the actual sophisticated traffic situation, just to give you a feeling of everything that's involved. But the important thing for me to do today is to gallop right through it and communicate with you the big concepts, because you have to keep an eye on that. One other thing that I think is important to know is that there's a lot of inertia in this world for complex things. This initiative is extremely complex, and if somebody doesn't get up in the morning every single morning and kick the ball forward, it doesn't even stay in place, it rolls back down again. It's the nature of the thing. And what I would hope to see is after this and the next presentation on the 10th is that a certain, groups like yourself or numbers of you actually feel that they have to move it forward. Now, because this is basically a resort community, the videotape is exceedingly important. So we're making 2 videotapes, and those will be more or less available over time. Also, the report, once it's finished, will be electronic, and you can put it in your computer, take a good look at it, and spread it very easily. Sometimes it's funny, photocopying takes a lot of effort and money, but just making a little copy in your computer costs virtually nothing. So we're going to deliver the report electronically, and we hope it spreads, like one of these revolutions that happens in those other countries. There's not enough revolutionary activity in this country, frankly. Everybody settles down and goes to Floribama or something. Okay, so very broad strokes. This study area, by the way, everybody likes to say, we're so unique. Okay, the first thing I have to do when I show up to a place is say, you're so unique. Actually, most American places aren't unique at all. But you happen to be unique. This really is different. This is extraordinary to have a place like this, which actually has a substantial area in the center, and then great long branches, which essentially are wonderful, valuable beach on both sides. One of which is natural, and one of which is actually, I would say, in play. Another thing that's unusual about this is that you began developing essentially in 1970. Okay, now this coincided, since 1970 now, is the lowest period of Western architectural culture. It was better in the 50s, it was better in the 20s, you can tell. Okay? And hopefully it'll be better in the future. But there's a lot that has to be mitigated. Okay? There's a lot that has to happen. And the worst part is not the aesthetics, which, by the way, I don't think that it's really that bad. It's just condominiums. They're not brilliant, but they're not bad. The worst part is the commitment that there was in this period towards automobile dependency. You know, which is to say, you can't do anything on this island without driving. I mean nothing. You can't get groceries, you can't see your friends, etc. And that's a real problem in the 21st century. There are three problems I need to emphasize. First of all, as people get older, they don't drive. It just becomes a burden, and eventually you stop driving, then you have to sell your beautiful condo with the view and go to a retirement community where they drive you around. And that's what happens when you haven't got a place that is walkable. Because, by the way, old folk can walk a very, very much longer time than they can drive. Second thing is, if you care about climate change, one of the things that happens is that, by the way, you know, it actually doesn't matter if it's true. The young people think it's true. That's all you need to know. Okay? And it doesn't even matter how they got there. It was the school. But the young people are very committed to all sorts of stuff, like bicycling and climate change and environmentalism. And they're not only your kids who want to come to a cool place and vacation, they're the people who are going to buy the condos. And if this is one of these places that becomes uncool because you can't drive anywhere, and I think you've heard that what's really cool for the young people now are the downtowns. Okay? So it is imperative for the real estate value of this place that you change from the 1970s car-dependent model to the model of the 21st century future. And it has nothing to do with science, it has to do with real estate. One really interesting little wake-up call. Your waterfront here for high-rises sells for between 9,000 and 12,000 per linear foot. Okay. In our walkable communities down the road, like Seaside and Rosemary Beach and Alice Beach, okay, in beaches exactly like this, it sells for 57,000 per linear foot. Okay. 5 times as much. And what are they selling there? Oh, if you live here, it's walkable. Okay? If you live here, your kids love to vacation with you. If you live here, they have something to do. If you live here, it's a good place to have a retirement community. We're talking about a model that is going to be out of date within 2 decades. It's going to be very clear that this kind of place, no matter how great the beach and the mouse and everything, you're not ready to confront the reality of the 21st century, of, you know, what makes real estate valuable. So, clearly, when you hire us, what we do, what our firm does, we're not neutral. You know, we do 2 things. One is we participate in the public, which is what you're doing. The other thing we do, we always design walkable mixed-use communities. Okay, walkable mixed-use communities, that's what we do. And if you don't want that, you don't hire us. So we figured that we would actually, that you wanted to move this place towards that. The other thing we do is we actually work for developers. Okay, we're private sector people. We actually make land valuable. And as soon as developers have contact with us, they realize that we, you know, that we share the same goal, which is to make land valuable. Because there are a lot of well-intentioned planners that don't do that. They say, well, it's the right thing, the mouse, whatever. You know, do the right thing, don't worry about the business. Well, it doesn't work that way. I think that this place needs also to be curated for development as well. You know, not only for the mouse, but the way you have your retail. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that needs advice from a real estate point of view. Okay, so your island is special. Now, just a little drawing that I showed last time, which is pretty interesting. Seaside, this is Seaside, Florida. The most valuable real estate per square foot in Florida off the front. I give you the numbers at the front. It is the most valuable real estate per square foot back there, 400 feet in. Okay? And what we did is we took the stuff that is built anyway. We took, in suburbia, you have a collector street or an arterial, which is only for cars. Only for cars. By the way, Seaside is 89 miles to the west, to the east of here. Okay, and it's a real place. I was just there this weekend. The suburban model, which is the one you have, takes Route 38, takes a thoroughfare, and says it's only for cars. And they dedicate it to high-speed cars. And yes, humans can be there, but it's not nice for humans. You know, a little walking path and so forth. Everything faces away. Okay? Then you take, shopping comes in the form of shopping centers. a shopping center with a parking lot in front. Workplace or rental apartments, actually this was intended to be workplace. The places where you work are like office buildings, office park. And then you have starter homes, which are affordable in a different pod, separate pod, from move-up homes, which are more expensive, bigger lots, from executive homes, to use a ridiculous title. And then the condo where you're supposed to retire. Once you sell your home, you get a little condo for more view. Okay? Everything in suburbia is disassembled. Okay, that's what happens. Then you're supposed to assemble it by driving around. Now, if you look at the prior model, which are the traditional towns, which are seaside, go back. Everything is assembled. So, for example, if you take the first phase of seaside just here, that area, that has from the beginning shops, has the market, workplace, it's got offices, apartments, little buildings, big buildings, condominiums, and parking. And by the way, the parking's on the street. So if you go to Seaside, you'll see that the cars slow down. And, you know, and there's some complaint about that. Oh, the cars slow down. But the cars slow down so the kids can cross. And so the people can cross. And notice, there are dogs without leashes in Seaside that have been there for 10 and 12 years, never been hit. Nowhere. But that's just the test, because it means that the 8-year-olds don't get hit, or the 5-year-olds either. And what it is a profoundly human environment. Now, remember that this isn't the whole route. This is only a small portion of Florida, of 38. It's only when you enter Seaside and Rosemary Beach and Allen's Beach that you slow up. The rest of the time, the travel is fast. If you go east, you'll go through Santa Rosa. Okay, Santa Rosa is no big deal, but it's just a little American town. And you'll notice that all the high-speed stuff on 98, really high speed, changes sections. When you're in the park, you go really fast, big setbacks, you know, big recovery lanes and so forth. And then when you enter Santa Rosa, it slows up, and you have parking on the sides and cars. You know what I'm talking about, the traditional town right to the west of here. What we're going to propose here is that certain sections of your Perdido Key Drive actually become pedestrian intensive. Not the whole thing. And we have a traffic engineer, Rick Holt, that knows how to calculate that without losing capacity. In other words, move fast where you can, but there's certain spots which are town centers that we're going to propose to make walkable. And so it's kind of a shock, because that's not what the traffic engineers think about. They want to keep a constant section, high speed all the way. They don't change the context. But as I drove several times this weekend up and down all the way to Seaside, I could see that there's an example in front of your eyes of a section changing, that the section changes. Okay, so these are the two models. Next. Okay, now, this is the kind of detail that we got to. This is Perdido Key Drive right here. This is the famous curve. We engaged because this was a terrible intersection. We realized that some parts couldn't be built on. We realized that some parts were wetlands. But basically what we did here from beginning to end is take a large part of the units that are already allocated, you know, through the comprehensive planning, the old comprehensive planning, the units that are coming here anyway, and instead of having every developer do their own thing separately, which is what you've been getting, is assemble it into one comprehensive master plan. Okay, so it's one plan, and it's predictable. You know, for example, if you own this piece of land or you own this house, and this is owned by somebody else, you can actually tell the buyer that they're within 3 minutes walk of the shops. Okay, and that's not something that when everything does it independently, you don't have any predictability, so you don't have any value added. You don't know what it's going to be like. And people, real estate is always valuable when it's predictable. That's why the big communities like WCI have higher real estate value, because they have a predictable master plan. But you only have one of those. The rest of them are little land ownerships, and you can predict nothing. You can't tell your buyer whether their view is going to be blocked. You can't tell your buyer whether it's a 10-story condo or a 20-story condo. You can't tell anybody anything. And that's why the real estate values are comparatively depressed. Most beautiful beach in the world, and why is it so, you know, even beyond the recession and all that, you don't have a predictable environment. And so what we were asked to do is to create a master plan. And this is what you're getting. A master plan looks like this. It's a predictable circumstance. Okay. So now you have something called a land use map. The land use map is what's actually happening. It's not a code, it's what's actually happening. And so you have towers, and you have a little this, and a little that, little bingo parlor, little, you know, all this stuff. Do you realize that a bingo parlor comes in and it becomes a local epic? Well, why don't you decide ahead of time not to have, you know, that kind of thing. But it isn't that. It's condos that pop up as a surprise on both sides of the road. So what we'd like to do, what's here is here, okay? This is land use. The problem is that your code is absolutely out of control. Your code is completely irrational. There are and Marina has had the misfortune of reading the code and diagramming it. Marina's my partner, okay? And she's really durable. So she read this code, and she's going to give you a little feeling as to how dysfunctional it really is. Obviously, what we propose here needs to have a new code. Planning department very kindly said, go for it. Okay? So this is land use. These are the building types that correspond to suburban sprawl that I mentioned earlier. You know, all the different types that never assemble and do anything. Next. And they're here. There is virtually nothing here that's a village, that's village-like. But there's the beginning of these possibilities. You know, they're all almost independent. They're like spaceships. Everybody's in their spaceship. And you get extraordinary things, like this is a 10-story condo in a single-family area. Did you know, Marina's going to say, did you know those of you who live over here, who have, here on the east, those houses, do you realize that's zoned for 10 stories? Do you also realize that the beach mouse has an overlay on it that says you can't build anyway? Not even a single-family house? So you have this surreal, you know, surreal stuff going on, and you say, how can they stand it? But what happens is that these decisions were made, somehow no one remembers, they take a long time, but you have this kind of thing. So it's our job not just to do the glamorous stuff, but to clean out the protocols, to clean out the method that you use to decide whether to build and how to build. So we want to enable this to happen efficiently and predictably to raise your real estate value so you can decide to continue living there and what it's going to be like. Next. By the way, these drawings were prepared by us. These drawings that have the footprints and so forth. This might seem like nothing to you, but there was no mapping like this. We actually mapped the footprints. So now we're going to leave this behind and you can actually tell what's there. Because we couldn't even start until we prepared the maps. Okay, now this is the Perdido Key beach mouse habitat. I'm going to spend just a few minutes on this to explain. Most endangered species, like the Perdido beach mouse, need to be identified. You do a study and say, where's the mouse? And then you stay clear of it. You stay clear of the mouse, stay clear of the owls, stay clear of the tortoise. This little creature is special. In this one, the entire habitat is in fact a place you cannot build. Okay? The entire habitat, even if a mouse has never been there. Just because the mouse might be there, or intends to be there, or could be there. So this is new, this is habitat. And this is how it happened that in some quite irrational places where you know the mouse wouldn't even want to be, nevertheless, it has the flora and the fauna and the soils that the mouse would like. This is extremely unusual, and whatever you knew about endangered species, this is endangered species habitat. Okay? Because of that, it's mappable. All this orange is where the mouse could or may want to be. Normally, you don't get maps like this. You don't get maps like this because you have to spend a lot of money going out and observing where the mouse is and trapping evidence of the mouse and so forth. This one is mapped. So it's very interesting to get it. Now, this is a real problem for a lot of people because people who thought they could build now can't. So there's of course, obviously, when there's something like this, a habitat, there's a mitigation procedure. You have the right to actually say, well, could I mitigate this? Could I minimize the problem because I would like to build here? Normally, that's a very lengthy and expensive negotiation. You know, for large pieces, it might take years and years and years and millions of dollars. WCI just went through something really enormous like that. Millions of dollars, half a decade to get there. Very kindly, your government and the planning department has negotiated or is about to conclude, or keep your fingers crossed, negotiations with EPA in Washington, and is bringing the right to mitigate that locally. So if you want to build a house in one of these orange areas, or you want to build a project, you don't have to go to Washington. You can imagine what that's like. You can go to Tim and tell Tim what your plans are and try to minimize, and then you will be allocated at some cost, at minimal cost. You have to buy the mitigation. Okay, it's a few $1,000s. You buy the mitigation so that some other habitat can be bought, or Tim's salary can be paid. You know, you need to do that kind of stuff to keep Tim here. Now, Tim is very willing to do this because there was a kind of political backlash against all this stuff suddenly being put orange. Now, so the first thing we encountered here is wherever we said, people said, do some planning, there's, you know, somebody's going to build here, can't you plan it coherently? We said, but it's mouse habitat. So we had to come up with something that dealt with a mouse habitat. And you will see when the plan comes up how we're going to use the mitigation creatively. Really, really creatively, okay? So that it turns from a negative to a positive. And I never thought the story would end up like this. I thought it would end up like oh, what a nightmare for everybody. I first thought that there was nothing, I don't know whether you heard the story, but when I first heard about this, I wanted to resign and say, I'm not going to take your money. There's nothing to be done here. The mouse has everything. And I don't know whether you were present, but I swear, there's nothing to be done, I said. There's nothing to be done. The mouse is everywhere. So what are we doing? And then I realized that this mitigation procedure was serious and it could be used creatively. So I'm going to talk about how that goes. So this is the mouse habitat. Okay. By the way, these are the wetlands. Remember, that was the old developer nightmare. It's not even, this is actually wet, you know. The Perdido Beach habitat is sand, so it's really a problem. By the way, there's something we're not engaging in. There's habitat on the right-of-way. The right-of-way, actually, the mice might like. It's the kind of sand they like. And so this widening that some of you are very much committed to also has an environmental problem that has to be mitigated. We are not engaging that. Okay, the mitigation within the highway we're not engaging. There are engineers doing that already and been working on. Okay, so that's outside our purview. However, we do have proposals for how to design the road. The mitigation we don't know. So these are the wetlands, and these generally we don't want to mitigate. Now, what is left is this. Okay, this is the stuff that's developable. This is what remains. There's some lots. Mostly, what's left are the old lots here that are built, and quite a lot of the golf course, the WCI golf course. Now, all this stuff is already built or has footprints on it. Is already built or has the old footings on it, the old slabs. Best thing that could ever happen to you is that you didn't take your slabs away after the hurricane took it down. Because the mouse actually doesn't like concrete slabs yet. Okay? But they're studying it. So that's why, those of you who have slabs actually can build right here again. By the way, it isn't just the footprint of the building, it's the driveway as well. Footprint and driveway. So anything you cover up with impervious surface has to be mitigated if you don't already have a slab and an old driveway. So this is the buildable land. Now these are the properties that have development agreements. These are properties that before the bust, before the Great Recession, were going to go forward. An awful lot of stuff was going to go forward. In fact, how many? 2,800 units. 2,800 unbuilt units were in process at the county. Remember, this entire key only has 3,500 built units. So already in process, you know, before this recession, was almost as many units as you have. It was going to double in size almost immediately. That all got stopped. We have the plans and we put them in. Okay. By the way, the development agreements are designed to lapse. You know, because you can't just keep them forever, because you have new elected officials, new neighbors. You have to start again and ask. You know, the mice may evolve as well. Everybody gets to have a say after a certain number of years. But in your lovely county, they're extending the development agreements. They just keep getting extended and extended and extended. So for all intents and purposes, the development agreements are real. Okay? They can actually build this stuff if they mitigate them out. So how do we unhook something? How do we, basically what I should say is that all these landowners were not talking to each other. Do you have that drawing? Later.
Further down.
Okay, so we drew all the submittals for development, and of course every parcel was their own little kingdom. This is my little entry, this is my little idea, this is my little single driveway to Perdido Key Drive. And you can imagine what this is like. Every single driveway into Perdido Key Drive. Just a nightmare for traffic. Okay, because only one road is in operation, and every impact, every incoherent driveway actually slows down the traffic. You actually don't have that many cars moving. What you have is a mess of driveways. Okay, and only one driveway which actually connects. So, rather than allow, or even, let me put it this way, we cannot forbid everybody to develop independently. You can't forbid them. It's their right, they have an application. What we can do is encourage them, reward them for working together. You see how different that is? Okay, I'm going to say something I'm going to repeat several times. We're not going to forbid anybody, and this master plan does not forbid anybody from building what the current code says or building their old plan. But what we are going to say is that there's going to be a new master plan, and if you follow the new master plan, you will have your mitigation. Okay, it's going to be built into the master plan. You will have your mitigation, and it's going to take a lot less time and a lot less money. It's going to be more predictable. So we're not punishing anybody, right? You can do the same old thing, although there's a new punishment called the habitat of the Perdido Key. That's a new punishment. What we're saying is we'll relieve you of that punishment, and the county itself will actually mitigate this. They will mitigate it for you. So the master plan will be mitigated so you can get on with it quickly. Okay? Now, I know that's almost impossible to believe that government is going to make something easy. But we've checked, and it sounds like a really good idea with everybody. Next. Now, what was negotiated with Washington is that 66 acres of habitat could be mitigated at the rate of 12 acres every 5 years. 66 acres. Now, this is not 12 acres of land, it's 12 acres of footprint of what you cover. What your house covers and what your driveway covers. It's a lot of land. It's a huge amount of land. 66 acres doesn't sound like a lot if it's land, but if it's buildings, it's a lot. So we just strung it. We took the commercial part of that, and we said, if we put one continuous store 60 foot deep, look what you get. That's how much mitigation there is. In other words, you cover every single, you can have a continuous store at 14 miles long on both sides of the road. Next. And if you were to build houses, if you were to build little houses like this, what's the footprint of these?
1,500.
If you were to build houses with 1,500 square foot footprints, which is say 3,000 square foot houses at 2 stories, right, like these, you could actually put it on both sides, both sides every road you have. So there's a lot of footprint. Let me put it this way, there is no shortage of this 66. Don't worry about it. The only problem is that it's very hard, it's just costly to get it for your house. So I know some people are going to battle over the 66, that's not your problem. Now, some of the numbers. In the old comprehensive plan, there were 7,150 units capped. You were capped that way. Why you were capped that way? They have secret formulas. It changes all the time, and who knows how you arrived at this one. I've heard some great stories, like your elected officials had a huge fight with Tallahassee, they took revenge. In fact, that's better than the usual story. But you do have a cap, and there's some talk about raising it to 9,000 or whatever. You actually don't need it. You don't need to raise it, okay? Because you can hardly use the 7,100, as you will see. So that's another battle. I mean, if you want to let people raise it, raise it. It won't be used in your lifetime or your kids' lifetime. In other words, that's a non-problem, okay, raising the cap. Somebody might get a few votes for that, but it's not going to work. Okay, you already have, as of 2012, you have 3,800 units built. You have 33 to go. This key of yours is going to double. Okay, and there's nothing much you can do about it because it's permitted even in the old very constrained, DCA, Tallahassee, in control days. It's controlled. And of these, this is what the boom was like, an astonishing 2,850 have development rights because they submitted one of these incoherent proposals I was referring to. There's only 450. You know what? If all we had to do was work with 450, it's not worth our time. That won't affect your lifestyle. We need to work with all of these. We need to take the last half of your growth